I grew up in a middle-class family, but I became working class when I was 16 working in McDonald's.
Hello everyone and welcome to Quiet Riot, the politics podcast that turns down the heat in order to increase the warmth. My name is Naomi Smith.
And I'm Andreou. My wardrobe today has been purchased by me. But if listeners want to donate any designer outfits, I have been trying to fit into a large since the late 80s, so send medium.
For the very first time, we've emerged blinking into the sunlight, freed from our little basement recording studio to engage with actual people in real time. So we're absolutely thrilled to be coming to you live from the Radio Academy Festival 2024.
So a huge hello to listeners at home and a big hug to the audience here. And now breathe out, kick back and rise up for another Quiet Riot.
Welcome to a very special live episode of Quiet Riot. I'm Naomi.
And I'm Alex, thrilled to be in front of an audience again. How I have missed you.
And we've got producer Kenny, everybody. Listeners might be able to, if he shouts loudly enough, he might get picked up by the lapel. Thank you. On this week's show, everybody hates Starmer. We'll be discussing why everyone is already annoyed with the new Prime Minister, and we've got two regular features for you. You got to troll with it, and Wokey Dokey.
Plus, we'll cover the second attempt on President Trump, then get ourselves in the mood for party conference season by sharing our favourite gossip from them.
And we couldn't afford to book two guests, so we're joined by the only person who can debate both sides of an argument at the same time. He's a repeat Quiet Riot offender, friend of the show, Rory Bremner. Welcome,
Hello.
Rory.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rory, we're recording here at the Royal College of Physicians, which is handy if you die on stage.
Yes. It's a wonderful building.
But a little birdie told me this is not your first time here, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, this Royal College of Physicians, I mean, those doctors are doing well for themselves, aren't they? I mean, they really are. I mean, nothing says desperate need for pay rise like a grade 1 building in Regent's Park. But I did come here. It was when Blair, it was the first time we did Blair. You know, Blair and Alistair Campbell, we did those sketches, and Andrew Dunn played Alistair Campbell. And so it's nearly 30 years ago when Labour came in. So Jeff, the producer, said, right, we're going to improvise a scene here where Tony Blair is making a speech and Alistair Campbell will coach you. So he started coaching me and I was sort of like, and we were improvising it. And Alistair, or Andrew as Alistair, kept interrupting. And I got really pissed off. I got pissed off as myself. So as Blair, I said, well, why don't you do it then? You make the speech. And he came back at me and says, oh, no, hang on, Tony, wait. And we had this kind of, he was trying to calm me down, I was trying to, and it really worked as the two characters. And suddenly we had the chemistry for Blair and Campbell, because the cameras were just sort of following us as we were having a real-time row. And that kind of just got us under the skin of Labour, because as each government comes in, you've got to find the hook, because it's different with each government. And for us, the key was that Blair and Campbell relationship, and it was born right here.
Must have been a challenge when you were trying to find the hook for the Liz Truss government.
No, unfortunately. I mean, I can't believe there's 6 prime ministers in 8 years. It's just, isn't it crazy? I mean, what do they ask you if you go into hospital with a head injury? Who's the prime minister, right? No wonder the hospitals are so full. People keep getting that question. And if you've been in a coma for 2 months, you missed Liz Truss completely. So it's just, But yeah, it was born here.
After you get what you want, you don't want it. If I gave you the moon.
Now, the social media reviews are in. I thought Boris was the worst Prime Minister in my living memory, but Starmer has exceeded him in just a few short months. Everything he does is an attack on the British people.
Keir Starmer has no morals and has proven himself to be a self-serving two-faced snake. He is by far the worst PM we've had in my lifetime. Get him out at number 10.
Starmer is the worst Prime Minister in history by far. Where many were flawed, Starmer is a genuine despot.
Starmer's government is a leftist military takeover.
Starmer is so far right he doesn't even hide it. Thatcher returns in male form.
Starmer is the most dangerous left-wing prime minister since the 1970s.
A new party could fill the vacuum that was created when Starmer shifted further to the right than Farage.
Starmer is a deeply ideological hard leftist, far more radical than even Corbyn.
I've been looking back in history in order to compare Keir Starmer with a similarly abysmal prime minister, but there doesn't appear to be one.
Starmer wants anyone criticising to shut up. He is a total communist and a dictator. He is the most dangerous PM we've ever had because he is totally insane. Is he a Mason?
And my favourite, this was attached to a photo of Keir Starmer clasping his hands. Keir Starmer is the worst Prime Minister Britain has ever seen. Here he is with a symbolising gesture to his satanic overlords. Right, so I think we can say with some confidence that the honeymoon is over.
Well, I think it's like my actual honeymoon. When I spent most of the time making economic speeches and my wife worried about whether she'd brought enough dresses.
Oh, we're doing the frocks, are we?
Shall we
go straight into the frocks? Because I have thoughts on that.
Well, I bet you do. Go on.
It's always the hardest time of the year for a Labour leader, London Fashion Week. I mean, if you think back, Michael Foot, Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, you know, he was getting all the freebies from Banana Republic, Oxfam and Trinity Hospice, and all these, and he was always trying to blag tickets for Alexander McQueen catwalk thing. So
listen,
come on then, Starmer fanboy, do the defence.
Shut up.
Get it out of the way.
I've had a lively debate on this issue online for the last few days, and it seems to have crystallised around the issue that basically someone who is on 150 grand has loads of money to buy loads of designer dresses for their wife anyway, you know, for when she goes with him to the G7 summit, or that she should just be getting it all from Marks and Spencer's. And so what we're seeing with this is an issue that we see repeated with a lot of Starmer's troubles, that he's being judged by a standard that is basically not in place yet. So people would like the rules to be different. People would like politicians not to be accepting any gift, but there is no funding there. There's no allowance for the spouse of a prime minister to get dressed. And if she turned up in her jeans and a T-shirt, then we know what would be on the Daily Mail the next day. And so how do we square that circle where a politician's spouse, especially a politician's wife, let's be honest here, will be picked apart in the newspapers, whether she's dressed up to the nines or whether she sort of eschews all that and says no.
And I do think Sarah Brown, Gordon Brown's wife, used to get horrible commentary from the right-wing press about looking too frumpy or mumsy or whatever awful word they attached to her outfit.
And it's interesting, you said that to me and I went and researched it. So for the last year, post-global financial crisis, she started borrowing clothes from this firm that does basically rental designer frocks. And then all the headlines were about that. All the newspapers were like, the shame of Britain. The PM's wife has to wear second-hand clothes. It's like...
OK, but let's unpack it a bit. So the issue is that a major donor to the Labour Party had funded the wardrobes of both the Prime Minister with very designer spectacles.
Was that the same? Was it still Wahid
Ali?
Yeah. I mean, he's been just handing money left, right and centre.
Yeah,
well,
for a long
time. Right
and
centre, anyway. But, yeah, is it all him still?
Yeah.
But they didn't properly disclose it in the Register of Interest. They realised that they hadn't. They went to the parliamentary standards.
So this was before the story broke in the papers.
We probably should have included this, and they should have, and now it's
and that's important. So this was a week and a couple of days before there was any hint of it in the newspapers. They went, his team, I suspect, I don't think he does his own declarations, but his team went back to the appropriate authority and said, look, we thought we didn't have to disclose the gifts that went to his wife, but we now think we got that wrong. So here's an additional list of gifts that went to his wife.
And I think today a load more have been added in as well, like £100,000 worth or more of hospitality.
No, I think today the list was published,
Right,
so
okay.
people know the total, as it were.
Is that
And
the Arsenal tickets?
there are
and all
things
that?
like Arsenal tickets
Yeah.
and other kinds of gigs and things like that.
They've always done this. I mean, I find my favourite Boris one was he got a second-hand bike worth £4,000 from the president of the regional government of Kurdistan. I mean, this stuff is just so ridiculous.
What
You're
second-hand bike costs
Exactly. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see this bicycle. I'm feeding you. That is one Boris bike. Let me tell you. I hope it's electric. But I think you're right. There is hypocrisy. I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, aren't you?
Yes, but some of that hypocrisy is slightly of one's own making. This is the Prime Minister who has said, this is a government of service, who, in opposition, made a huge play about needing to be transparent, honest, open, have integrity, criticised repeated Conservative Prime Ministers for not having the ethics SAR in place, etc. So I think when you paint yourself as being the alternative to the sleaze-ridden, scandal-ridden, help your mates out nepotistic stuff we saw from the crony contracts right through to, the upgrade of number 10 when Johnson was there and another Tory millionaire paid for the total refurb there and all the rest of it. If you paint yourself in opposition to that, you will get more legitimate criticism when you fall short of those kinds of standards than if you are a Boris Johnson type who says, well, I never agreed to abide by the rules, so don't be surprised when I don't. It does hurt the left more than it hurts the right. And I think that brings us on to how they're handling the comms generally. And I think the consensus is that it's very, very poor, whether it's around this issue, which I think they probably could have got ahead of far better, particularly seeing as it was them proactively going and saying, actually, we've probably not included some donation amounts that we should have done, but over the winter fuel and various other things. So I'd love us to sort of talk about that a little bit more, what we think they could and should be doing better on the comms front, Alex?
Well, I mean, look, they should temper the gloom with a little bit of hope. It's just too miserable at the moment, I mean, people understand it's a difficult situation. They get the black hole, my God. But it's now time to somehow say to people, with your help, we can get out of this. There is a path that leads from this misery to something a little bit better. And I think, sadly, Starmer is not that kind of politician.
Well, no, I don't think he ever was, but you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to manage the tone from the start. We will govern as we campaigned, tediously, stodgily, setting out our vision for the country in the style of a man explaining to a doctor the symptoms of his ongoing constipation. And it is, I mean, for impressionists, it's fun to do. And you can see, but it is difficult because it does become a real character. You can imagine the great speeches of our time done by Keir Starmer. Can we do it? Probably not. But he forgets, you're right. I think, you would want somebody to challenge the country and say, look, we are a great country. We can be great again. Not the great again as in that way, but we can be greater. But it's going to be a challenge because you look around and I totally buy the narrative that they have inherited a dreadful legacy because you just have to look around you, whether it's railways, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals. It's obvious and say, we have to rebuild and we're going to challenge. We have to just do this together. But of course, Kennedy, he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I mean, Keir Starmer, unfortunately, is just saying, ask not what your country can do for you for fear of disappointment. And there's a difference. Yeah. And he has to kind of overcome that somehow. I mean, it is, but as you say, the trouble is he's not that kind of personality.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to the episode that the three of us recorded the day of the election. And this was something that cropped up. We were saying, do you know what the pitfall ahead is? That they're not sort of inspirational politicians. And it's a really difficult time ahead. And who's going to be the one that kind of G's people up to rebuild the country?
But also, there's a real problem here because people always say they want politicians to tell it how it is. So you tell it how it is, and people say, actually, I'd rather you told it how it isn't. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
I think there is the realism, but I mean, I would really love. But you see, the trouble is that I mean, this is what Boris Johnson would do. I wouldn't say he wasn't a great leader, but he was a cheerleader in that sense. But I think Starmer. It's not necessarily his character, but to really inspire people, say we can do this, we really can do this, but we need people to be on board, and you can see the state of the mess, but we can really, it's up to us, our generation, to be as great as the Victorians to the future generation.
We'll be talking about party conferences in a later section in the show, but the theme they've gone with for the Labour Party conference, which begins the day after the show airs, is Change Begins.
Oh, not let me entertain you.
Really not that.
Let me manage your expectations.
Or, if
Change begins.
To a donor, spare any change.
Change begins.
Change begins. And that doesn't in itself, to me, give that vibe of, look, we know it's going to be tough, but here's why at the end of the tunnel that tough will be worth it. So that's the bit that we're missing.
Okay, but
so like the winter fuel allowance, just let me finish on that point. Had they wrapped that up as, by April next year, the average pensioner in the UK is going to be £400 a year better off, because in aggregate, that is but they've allowed the narrative to be all about losing out on the winter fuel payment, not bigging up and talking about all of the other things that people will get in return. And that's just really basic.
But the winter fuel allowance is another illustration of the other problem they have, which is that they get it from both left and right. And that, I think, is a structural problem. We knew it was going to happen. We knew he was going to get criticised from people on the right and from people on the left. And a lot of the people on the left are the people who have been saying for 14 years, you're battering the younger generation and insulating pensioners really from the worst of austerity. They're now saying, don't you dare take pensioners' winter fuel allowance away. And it's like, well, I mean...
Why did they choose that particular hill to die, or fight on, if not die on? I mean, why do you think they...
Because I suspect they think that, and it's factual, like if you look at the last 14 years, pensioners have done better than any other demographic in terms of...
Because taking money away from wealthy pensioners is taking it away from people who don't vote for the Labour Party.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that too. And that's why pensioners have been so sheltered, because they vote for Conservatives, so they've looked after them.
E so che questo sarà solo il primo di molti altri incontri. Grazie, Keir, a te la parola.
Thank you very much, Georgia. This is my first visit here to Italy as Prime Minister, so it's really great to be here today in such a fantastic setting, fantastic weather. The perfect venue, I think, to follow on from Blenheim Palace.
Another example, Meloni, okay? People are really upset that he went and visited Giorgia Meloni because she's very hard right. You know, the party's roots are fascist, really. So he went and visited with her, and he was courteous, and they had a sort of jovial back and forth. And they're exactly the same people that are saying, we need a closer relationship with Europe right now. We need to be in the single market and the customs union. It's like, how do you plan to do that without fucking Italy? How do you plan to do that without everyone on board? Every single member state can veto anything, the smallest change to the treaty. So if you want a closer relationship to Europe, you better get used to him buddying up to some unpleasant people. There's Austria to come, there's Hungary, exactly, Hungary to come. Yeah. So pick your poison. Do you want a closer relationship with Europe?
Yes.
Or do you want Starmer to just go there and go, you fucking fascist?
The only thing I'd counter that is the reason for the visit was discussing Meloni's immigration plan, which is Rwanda light, shall we say. So it's about processing small boat refugees trying to make it to Italy in Albania, just south of Tirana. And so it was him looking at that scheme to see whether there was anything. And lots of people say that she was influenced by the Tories Rwanda scheme, which, of course, every Labour MP cried blue murder over repeatedly for all the years, and it's one of the first things the Starmer government killed off. So you're right. We cannot criticise the Labour government for going and speaking to all of the nation states as well as Brussels. But with that particular trip, the nuance was that they were discussing something that a lot of Labour-leaning voters don't like the sound of.
So you can't win, really, because the Conservatives will say, you're stealing our clothes. And you'll say, well, no, because they've been bought by that person over there.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So, but it's slightly Alex's point, really, that you've got to steer a line because there'll be a lot of hypocritical noise all over it.
Yeah.
Left and right. And it's whether you're pulled in which... So I guess you have to get the messaging really strongly.
You do.
You've just said to me it's about the wealthy pensioners, but people are still thinking it's going to be the most vulnerable. If they keep saying, no, look, this is the point, this is the... and making it clearly and loudly, as loudly as they've made the 22 billion thing, so that people think, okay, well, this is wealthy pensioners.
And you can't separate the reaction over the, oh, look, designers are lending clothes to my wife or she prances around Fashion Week and this rich guy is, funding our wardrobe to the tune of whatever, against the backdrop of people thinking that you're taking money away from vulnerable elderly and we're all facing a cost of living crisis. That's why the strategic joined-up comms of it matters so much, because the wardrobe gate is coming off the back of Winter Fuel Gate.
Oh, God, is it a gate now?
It's Frock Gate. It's Frock Gate, apparently, because it's gendered and,
I don't like
terribly,
that.
Awful.
Frock
Gate.
Look,
maybe there should be a clothing allowance. Wahid Ali, you'd buy a whole lot of dresses, which have got to last the next administration as well. So when, I don't know, Kemi Badenoch comes in, she's got a choice. She could, but then you'd have a size issue as well, wouldn't you?
As you might know, listeners, we like to give calls to action on our podcast. So whether politics is something that you sort of regularly do and are part of or not really does depend on you. You've got to do democracy, not just let it happen and be done to you.
Yeah, so whatever you think of Starmer, his government has been busy. There are dozens of consultations on the government website at the moment, arranging across loads of stuff that you can, everything from how you measure outside noise to actually loads of consultations. The one I have chosen because it feels particularly relevant to me, they are consulting on family visa requirements at the moment and whether the income level demanded of those wishing to bring a spouse or a family over is set at the right level.
It's not.
So we'll drop a link in the show notes, and there's loads. There will be something that you're interested in, there will be something that you have experience of, that you can contribute to. This is a very receptive time for a young government. Make your voice heard.
Outside noise, it's really interesting, because when John Bird and John Fortune went to look at the European Parliament working, they found the European Parliament that day was debating the harmonisation of lawnmower noise across the European community. Everyone was, oh, how ridiculous. And of course, you know how they did that thing that Europe was them, wasn't it? What are they doing now? And harmonising lawnmower noise. Until they realised that debate had been promoted by the British, because we couldn't sell lawnmowers that were made in Halifax unless you harmonised them, the ones that were made in Hanover and all the rest of it. So again,
regulatory alignment, folks. That's what
absolutely. It's what about the hypocrisy about what are they doing? And you find out it's us, and you find out actually it makes sense to have a level playing field and a well-mowed one.
Well, there you go, everybody. Make your voice heard. Check out the show notes for links to all of that.
You're always wishing and wanting for something. When you get what you want, you don't want what you get.
Quiet, Riot. It is now time to bob into the barrel of wokeism and come up with the most dangerous apple gripped between our teeth. Tune your banjos. It is, of course, time for Wokey Dokey.
Wokey Dokey.
Alex, come on, what have you got for us today?
There were so many, it was an embarrassment of riches. I have two and I could not decide between them, but I will try to do both quickly, okay? So the royal family is woke now, according to GB News.
Well, we knew that Meghan and...
Oh, they don't consider her part of the royal family in GB News. It would be ridiculous.
They did a woke storm out.
Yeah. So this is for them taking the word walkabout out of the schedule of the forthcoming trip to Australia, because the term holds significant cultural meaning
In Australia.
for Indigenous Australians, and they've replaced it with meeting the public. This is something that has been a big part of tradition, political commentator Anna McGovern fumed. She fumed. Rory. And I just think it represents the trend where we're prioritizing not wanting to upset people. I just think it's absolutely woke ridiculousness.
Is this
You know
a
what?
column?
I think the next Tory leader might want to prioritise upsetting people. That's the thing. Well, why would you want to prioritise
I love
upsetting
that.
people?
It's like, what? Yeah, anyway, so that's one. The other one comes courtesy of the Daily Star, and it's about Sky Sports abbreviations having gone woke. So what happened is Harrogate was playing Doncaster Rovers. So Sky decided to abbreviate them as HAR and DR rather than have hard on the screen for 90 minutes, okay? And these are the quotes. Sky changing Doncaster to DR is, capitals, utter woke nonsense. One fan fumed.
It's a lot of fuming.
I know, there's a lot of fuming on these. While a second with the surname Harden shared, what next? Sky Sports would censor my surname. A third sighed, we used to be a country. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex. Listeners, remember, do send any instances of woke that you come across that you think are funny enough to be read out to quietriotpod@gmail.com.
Quiet Riot. God has now spared my life. It must have been God. Thank you. Not once, but twice. And there are those that say he did it because Trump is going to turn this state around. He's going to turn this country around. He's going to make America great again. And maybe. And we're going to bring back religion into our country. Bring it back.
Now let us sail across the Atlantic to check on the latest from the presidential election. And the item dominating the news at the moment is another attempt on Trump's life. I should clarify we are discussing the second attempt. I say this because if you're listening over the weekend, there's probably been a third and maybe a fourth one. So just because he's orange does not mean he's a target, y'all. I jest, of course. But the serious point here is just how normal this has become and how quickly. Like the first time everyone was like, that's it, election is over, defining moment of the decade. 2 months later, everyone is like, oh no, not again, what's for lunch?
But it was a miracle. You know, it was a miracle what happened. In Pennsylvania, it was a miracle. I turned my head and the bullet went straight through. Total miracle. It missed my brain by 6 feet. So just total miracle. This is a little less plausible, this one, isn't it? Because you feel it was at his own golf course. And the FBI was supposedly, they shot at this guy and they missed. And it's all a little bit kind of, I don't know.
And also, like, if you spent the last month saying immigrants are eating dogs, and it's quite a heightened threat environment, like, stop standing in the middle of fields dressed in plaid.
But they're eating the dogs, though. They're eating the cats. There's a lot of catless child ladies around the place now. But I mean, I think if you really want to shoot Donald Trump, and by the way, don't.
No, don't.
Don't.
Can we just make this very clear?
Absolutely.
Do not try this.
The way to beat Donald Trump is ballots and not bullets. Can't believe. Yes, who would say that? Ballots, not bullets. But yeah, so don't in the first place. But if you do after the election, because it's getting so confusing, because you think, is this a conspiracy? Is this not?
Like Biden has curtailed on the advice of the Secret Service and his security detail to limit what he does. This is not linked to his frailty. This is linked to, we cannot promise to be able to keep you secure if you keep doing meet the public, walkabouts, whatever we're meant to call it now. It's wokeness gone mad. Other senior politicians are curtailing their behaviours to try and keep themselves safe and their teams safe and the jobs easier of those paid to protect them. Trump doesn't. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit about anybody. Really? He wants to keep playing golf. And there is absolutely no way he hasn't been told, Mr. President, it is incredibly dangerous for you to be out on an open golf course and for us to be able to, keep you safe. They don't even have a getaway car that near him out on an open golf course.
I think they say he's got a bigger security detail now, but what I love is that there's a special detail, security detail of Trump on his golf courses that they are one hole ahead of him. So they're walking around one hole, which, being Trump, their job, basically, is to find his ball.
And put it really near.
And throw it back onto the fairway. And so he can turn up and say, that's incredible. It must have hit a tree or a stone or something like that.
No, he wouldn't say that.
I thought it was,
he would
it's
say
beautiful.
He hit it straight to the moon.
I had it there, and it was absolutely beautiful. But yes, it was a rather remarkable thing. Seeing the barrel of an AK sticking out of the bush is a very strange kind of thing. But my advice again is, you don't want assassinations, you don't want shootings, you don't want.
No.
So,
I mean, we've had
1960s, isn't it?
Politicians assassinated in this country in the last 10 years.
Yeah, but also work with your security team. I mean, for God's sake. There was a former FBI agent on MSNBC who was basically doing the map and saying, these are the areas of elevation from where you could shoot him. And it was just absolutely everywhere, because he's in the middle of a completely flat field. So she was saying you would need roughly, I think it was something like 140 people to secure that kind of area.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana.
You just said that you're
creating a story. Public policy.
Sir, you just said that you're creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it.
Let's go back to the cats and the geese. And
the geese.
And the dogs.
Oh, yes, they're eating the geese too.
They're taking the geese. They're taking the geese.
J.D. Vance says it's all made up. He admitted that,
Well, no, he did. I think he said, look, there's, we get told 12 things by people and, 10 of them turn out to be true, but why wouldn't you include the other 2 as well? Because it's what people are saying. That was what he said. And that was the thing about the truth. It's this relationship with the truth, which began with Trump saying, his crowds are so much bigger. And then Sean Spice says, they're so much bigger. And Kellyanne Conway says, well, yes, he's just giving you alternative facts. And then you move on to the end of Trump and you get, Scotty Hughes saying, well, unfortunately, there's no such thing as facts anymore. It's what you believe. And Vance...
You can prove anything.
Vance, exactly the same. Well, some of these are true, some of them are not, but if people are saying them, why wouldn't you repeat them?
Which makes me feel less bad about the horrible rumour that J.D. Vance had a relationship with his couch. Yeah. He split up from his first boyfriend because he was a lazy boy.
Because he was a lazy boy?
Yeah. Thank you. Cheers.
You've lost me completely now. What is the couch thing? You're going to have to explain
you don't know about the couch?
No, I don't know the couch.
No, not here, not now. Go and Google it at home. In incognito.
I've seen there's 2 open mouths in the open. Don't you know?
We don't do kink shaming on this show.
No, we don't.
If you've been affected by any of the issues on this podcast, please
don't tell us about it.
Is there a helpline? A helpline you get put forward to World of Leather.
Yeah. Quiet. Riot. It's time for another listener favourite, the feature where we celebrate the sceptics, the fault finders, the haters, and the outright odd by digging deep into our mailbags and grabbing the funniest crayon-written critique. It is, of course, time for Let's Troll With It. Gotta troll with it, you gotta love the hate, you gotta pray what you say won't make anybody ruin your day. Rory, I understand the entertainment team on a cruise ship that you worked for recently came in for some rather unusual flack.
Cruises are funny things. Have you done cruises, Alex?
Have I?
In your acting life?
I have done some cruising.
You set them up for that.
Oh, my God. You haven't done a sofa
on a ship?
No, I did one a couple of weeks ago, and one of the other entertainers is a guy you know, Kev Orkin, who's very, very funny. And his act, he's a very talented musician, brilliant talented musician and pianist, and he pretends to be this Armenian asylum seeker refugee who came to Britain through the Channel Tunnel on the roof of the Eurostar, and on the cruise line he said, he was he'd got onto the line and he was a stowaway basically. He was a stowaway and he'd been discovered by the captain, by the crew, and he begged, said, "Look, please, just let me entertain them. Just don't throw me off. Let me entertain the passengers." And that's what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to entertain the passengers. I'm going to play for you today. And I hope you like it.
Does he do it in an Armenian accent?
Absolutely, he does a called Armenian accent. Everything's okay. Okay, so he does that. But he's huge in Armenia, by the way. They love him. He hosts awards, things in Armenia. And he did a podcast recently in Los Angeles. I spoke to him this morning. And they had the biggest numbers ever. And he's playing this Armenian character. And in Los Angeles. And they had huge figures, like 60,000 people were sort of listening. And they discovered most of the people who were listening were out of the country. So Armenians are in on the joke. They love this whole thing. But anyway, the person who wasn't on the joke, that complained, was somebody wrote to the captain of the cruise. So I'd say, I'm appalled that this cruise liner should choose to use and to employ an illegal immigrant instead of turning him into the authorities, that you should allow him. And so he was summoned to the captain's cabin, and they said, "Look, I've heard this complaint." And so Kev said, "Well, what are you going to do?" The captain said, "Well, I'm going to stick it on the wall because it's the funniest complaint I've ever had." They were obviously trying to get another cruise out of the company. Amazing. And they always say, "This is the worst company, the worst cruise I've ever been on." They say, "Well, I'm so sorry. Would you like another cruise for free?" "Yes, absolutely. Where can we go?"
Quiet. Riot. Arthur Balfour, Conservative Prime Minister between 1902 and 1905, you see, you learn stuff with Quiet Riot, once said, "I would as soon be guided by my valet as by the Conservative Party conference." Considering the last few choices of leader by the Conservative membership, I think Balfour would be apologising profusely to his valet, I'm sure. Everything has stopped in the Palace of Westminster for another year while MPs, aides, lobby press and delegates meet to discuss important policy, but really to get drunk and sing karaoke. Even as a political obsessive, I have never been to one. I hate big crowds, and I cannot lie. Luckily, my fellow panelists are seasoned veterans. Naomi, what are they like? Let's start with you. I hear rumours of bacchanalian debauchery. Is that true? And are all the parties the same?
No, they're all really different. That is the thing to say. So, Green Party Conference is very, very sweet and very, very quaint. And it's changed quite a bit. It was much more hippy-dippy a few years ago. It's much less like that now, but there is an absence of corporates. It is sort of hyper-democratic. Lots of lovely vegan food is served, and it's a sort of lovely meet-up for a relatively small but growing cohort, and is kind and sweet and amateur. This year, for instance, if you'd been going for the first time as a new Green Party voter, of which there were many new Green Party voters at this election, you maybe thought, "Oh, I'll join and go along to the first conference." You may have come away from it thinking, "What the hell is that?" Because it was a lot of people sort of screaming at each other about whether HS2 was good because it gets people out of cars, or bad because, it carves up the countryside. So it's lovely and sweet. Then you've got the Liberal Democrat conference, which is the one I've been to most because I am formally of that parish no longer. I'm now not a member of any political party, but I would describe it as... What
was it that got you out of the Liberal Democrats? Was it the paddleboard?
Oh, Nick Clegg. It was Nick Clegg.
Right, okay, got you.
Coalition. So I would describe Liberal Democrat conference most accurately as 1,000 gay men chasing 500 straight men chasing one woman. So that, I think, is probably the most fair assessment of that. They are very democratic.
Such sexual energy.
And what I would say about that is it is a very democratic policy-making conference. So the members have one member, one vote rules. You can stand up and debate in any policy motion that you like. Anyone can put forward a policy motion as long as you've got a certain number of people seconding it and all the rest of it. And you you have a huge chance of that policy then becoming official party policy. It's sort of, very, very unlikely that it's not going to make it into a manifesto at some point or another. The sweet thing about Lib Dem conference during coalition was that suddenly you had all the little Lib Dem fringy odd groups like, the Lib Dem Friends of Cake and the Lib Dem Friends of Chard and things like that, suddenly next to an exhibition stall from BAE Systems. And they didn't drop the little guys. And that was quite sweet. Labour Party conference, very different beast altogether. It is incredibly macho. That was my kind of overriding impression when I first started going about 10 years ago for work. It's sort of very chest beaty. It's very stage managed, very controlled. And it'd be really fascinating to see what it's like this year because, it is a sellout gig. Tory Party conference has definitely got the best booze, best food, the least bad smells. People are quite well dressed, quite smart, but it's boring, corporate, and it's not democratic at all. It's not really a place for policy ideas to be debated and exchanged. They don't let me go, so I've applied to go. I've been previously, but in the last few years, anytime I've applied to go to Tory Party conference, they've emailed me saying, sorry, you're not welcome. And then I've not had the pleasure of going to an SNP or a Plaid conference, and certainly not a Reform UK conference.
Well, Reform, they don't really need. They don't need a conference, do they? They've got GB News.
What's going to happen when they have their conference this weekend?
What is going to happen if they all have to go to conference?
But they're going to do it from there.
They're going to need. They need a replacement bus service running GB News. Or just do that. What the Russians used
The
to do.
Brexit bus is available.
Or they could just play military martial music like they used to when the Russian presidents died. So always gets Farage saying, well, as we're away on conference, here's a piece of music for the next 3 days. At least the Tory party is different this year because they are going to do their version of the X Factor, aren't they? It's going, ladies and gentlemen, Tom, Tugendhat, Kemi, Badenoch. Because they did this a few years ago. It's how Cameron got in, wasn't it? Because they had Ken Clarke doing his, I'm the leader in waiting. Boy, have you kept me waiting. And David Cameron came through with that whole thing about, I don't want to do that again. Do you? I don't want to be that. Do you? All that.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is that the membership get to vote for the last two, but not this final four. So 4 of them go into the party conference, still in the race.
And then MPs.
But after the conference, the MPs do their final voting to knock it down to the final 2 that go to the membership. So the membership will be watching 4 speeches and pitches in the full knowledge that they won't get to vote for 2 of them. So the MPs are going to be watching how the membership is reacting to the 4, thinking, Christ, the members are loons, we don't want to give them a choice of...
We want to deny them the worst.
Exactly. So I think it's actually going to be quite a fascinating...
Well, they were very set on... They were set on Liz Truss last time, weren't they? That was the
very set on.
And there's no speech from the leader for the first time in...
Because there isn't...
Is he even going?
He's going for a few hours, apparently, but not speaking. He's checked out. He has checked out.
The last one was when he was outside Downing Street announcing the election.
I know.
Like it was a Richard Curtis film, I'm just a man standing in the rain, asking a country to love him.
More like a James Cameron film, I think.
But, we'll see what happens. I don't know. Who do you think they're going to go for?
Well, like I said, it's complicated because the MPs will be able to knock 2 of them out, so...
It's a bit like BAFTA, they do that. You make the nominations in the long list, as it were, and then to shorten it down, it's taken away from the members and it goes to the... And that was in the interest of diversity because they were so appalled about 5 or 6 years ago that they had a desperately white shortlist. They said, no, we're going to take this part of it. And then we'll hand it back to the members for last...
Hand it back to the racists.
I maintain that the leader that they go for now is a stopgap leader. I think they probably will go for somebody completely mad and that appeases the membership.
Which of those 4?
Well, yeah, I think it'll probably be generic, but it could be...
I think they should just do it. They should do it in the jungle at Christmas, actually. It's day 6. But Tom took it up. James Cavalier.
I find it very strange because each of them only get 10 minutes, which I think is going to be quite weird, right? 10 minutes to impress the conference.
10 minutes.
You can't build this a leadership vision and a speech in 10 minutes, can you?
They'll be invited to all sorts of fringes in and around the event. There won't be just that one set speech. They will be going back to back to back to back to back to every single fringe in every little breakout from the main stage.
I wonder if it would be a ballot to choose the order.
What's Tom Tugendhat going to do for the other 9 minutes? I mean, honestly, I don't. Yeah, this is a discussion that's really fun to have, isn't it? It's to be in this position now where they're kind of a laughing stock. But by the way, because it's topical this week, how good is John Major? This thing,
amazing. I don't know if anyone here heard the Today programme this morning. John Major was superb.
And with Amal Rajan, he said, "Look, we need the right. What we don't need is the far right. They've done enough damage with their factions and all the rest of it. Oh, great." And Amal said, "No, but do you think Farage should join the Conservatives?" "No, I don't." The man has spent most of the last few years saying how much he despises the Conservative Party and how he wishes to destroy it. I don't think that's a proper candidate to be in the party. You think absolutely right. He's been absolutely extraordinary. He's continuing.
I mean, if we had an awakenings type scenario and someone had been in a coma for the last 30 years, it would be quite a confusing world to wake up to. No, now John Major and Michael Heseltine, they're our friends now. Anyway, that's a wrap for another Quiet Riot. Join me in thanking our fabulous guest, Rory Bremner.
As you know, we have made a decision to make all of our content available freely. So whether you can afford to support us or not, we want you to be able to consume the show. We absolutely hate the idea of taking stuff away from people just because they might not be able to afford to subscribe.
Or because they're cheap. Being cheap is a protected characteristic as far as I'm concerned. But we have been looking for ways to reward those who do subscribe. Thank. And one of them is to include you in a regular strategy meeting where we discuss what features you like, what features you don't, new ideas, topics, guests, length, structure. It's all up for grabs. It's entirely your podcast.
And the first of those big editorial shindigs is going to come up next week on Thursday the 26th, probably about 7 p.m, in the form of a kind of giant Zoom call-esque thing. So do make sure you subscribe to us on ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod straight away and look for the link on the notice board of our page next Thursday.
So thank you for tuning in again. We are forever grateful, not to mention bloody surprised at how many thousands of you tune in every single week. In the words of Sally Field, you like us. You really like us.
We love you lots. And we'll see you again very soon.
And thank you to the audience here.
Thank you. Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith, Alex Andreou and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangita, artwork by Simona Canelu. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot. Of the Quiet Riot. So Rory Bremner joins Alex Andreou. That's a very nice name. Yeah, nice name. And Naomi Smith. What an honour to have you all here. So definitely stay and check that out. It's going to be really good.